The last couple lore-related videos I have made have been quite simple and unscripted, but now it's finally time to return to tradition and actually give you something better organized. The few who follow my channel more actively may have already known about the topic of this video, but for the majority that have no prior knowledge on my take on the topic, let me tell you about the endings of Touhou games. And when I say endings, I mean the ending sequences, both good, the bad and the neutral endings that you get to see upon completing the game or other criteria set. Most of you, myself included, are probably more well acquainted with the bad ends that you usually get after completing a game on easy mode or after using a continue. A good majority of us players have to experience the good endings from videos posted on YouTube or some other alternative route. And some people may be quite bummed about not being able to unlock the good ending on their own and being able to see the quote-unquote true ending. But what if I told you that not all Touhou games have true endings, or more specifically that all of them are just as true? Okay, so before we get into the meat and potatoes of this topic, we first have to distinguish which Touhou games we are talking about. This video is not about the Phantasmagoria games or the fighting games, as those games are quite well established in that every route is supposed to be played for the player to get the full story, and that a single route doesn't encompass the whole of the game. Basically, what I mean is that in those games one route leads to another and you have only character-specific endings in between, with the final ending waiting for you at the end of the final route. This video is not about those games, and for the sake of clarity we are also ignoring PC98 games due to their meta-narrative not being as developed as Windows titles. So basically we will be focusing on the standard mainline shooting games such as PCB, SA or LOLK. So what is so interesting about the endings of these games? Well, like I said, I do think that it really doesn't matter whether you get a bad or good ending when you play these games. They are all just as canon as the other. I dare go so far as to say that when you are playing the official Touhou games, you are creating your own personalized version of the canon. To help you understand what I mean by this, let me tell you how Zun has described the differences between Yukai and human mentalities, because it really comes down to the psychological differences between the two. Yokai, for the most part, are honest to a fault and keep promises once given. This is one of the main reasons the spell card rules are honored so universally. Yukai is capable of lies and deceit, but those instances are quite the rare exception. So where I'm going with this is that when Yukai loses a spell card duel, almost every time they will accept that loss and the terms that come with it without a question. However, humans have quite a different mentality. Humans, unlike Yukai, are not really bound to honesty so strictly. Where Yukai often have to rely on loopholes and technicalities to get around their own mental restrictions, so to say, humans can just resort to good old dishonesty, or in this case, to be a sore losers and not concede to the loss. It is said that when a spellcard rule is decided, if the loser is a Yukai, they almost always respect the outcome and accept it as it is, which is why most of the time the incident ends so peacefully. Yukai accept their own losses. However, the spellcard rules allow for a person to challenge the other party again immediately after the duel, even if the challenging party lost the first one. A human who doesn't want to respect the result of the duel can just immediately challenge the winner into a new duel. And if you look back into many of the bad endings in the games, a lot of the time it is the heroine getting defeated, overwhelmed or spooked by the main culprit and forced to retreat, but in some endings it is also outright stated that all they are doing is simply recuperate for their next attempt. And that's exactly what is happening, both in the narrative and in the meta aspect as well. Both the heroine and the player only go back to try again. In this sense, the player is directly driving the narrative through their own skills, or the lack thereof. If a game proves especially hard for them, it may take numerous trials and errors for them to finally get the good ending which sees the incident resolved. And all this is technically canon. The heroine is not always able to solve the incident on their first attempt, and may be pushed back multiple times before they succeed. Of course, I'm not saying that the characters repeat the same actions verbatim each time the player attempts a new clear, but that failing in solving the incident is not uncommon for heroines of these games. It also extends to your character selection. It really doesn't matter which one you choose or if you try different characters, each of those attempts and the resulting endings is just as canon as the other. HSIFS, if I remember correctly, even goes a little toward the ways of the spin-off games where every route is set to happen and kind of follow one another. UFO even goes as far as to make the bad ending a possible definitive ending. With the way the ending is presented, it is just as valid as a good ending with a playable character getting stuck in Makai and having to find their way back to Gensokyo while being disgruntled about their failure to beat the Akure. But knowing the nature of the incident of that game, it really doesn't matter whether the heroine wins or loses. The incident is resolved in the end and eventually every character finds their way back to Gensokyo. That being said, there are certain incidents that get referenced in print works, and sometimes the print work suggests at one specific route being more canon than the others. It, however, doesn't really take away from the other routes. Some games take the route of every character investigating and acting out on their own, and their routes just being the version of the events they witnessed. In some games, like in Imperishable Night, those routes can even cross. Some games, like LOLK, have a set canon way of clearing it, which is legacy mode no miss, but still have all the characters active in the story no matter who you decided to pick. An in-universe mention of a character solving an incident also doesn't exclude the possibility of other characters being involved, and thus doesn't invalidate the choices you have made. And like proven before, information characters have about the events of the world or even characters themselves are not always accurate, especially when recorded down by a queue for human village to read. Consider it in-universe censorship. The only real thing that goes against what Zun himself has said is that in games where you can play as Yukai, them attempting to resolve the incident again and again goes a little against what Zun himself has said about Yukai respecting the outcome of the duel. However, like Zun himself said, that is not always the case, and there are cases when Yukai can go against the norm and go back on their own words, so it is not really a contradiction, it is just an exception that the player can dictate whether it happens or not. So in the midst of the in-universe mentions, characters' own recollections, which are vague at best and unreliable at worst, consider your own experiences with the game, all the character swapping, struggles and victories, all that as the true canon, because for you it very much is. At the end of the day, if you cleared SA with a pacifist Marisa on your 69th attempt, then that is what happened, and if you failed to 1cc UFO and got your character stuck in Makai for a while like me, then that is what happened as well. Every Touhou game may not be personalized, but every version of the canon sure is. And what's better is that it is purely dictated by your own skill issue. And there you have it. Not exactly a theory, and instead more of an explanation, so to speak. A proper lore talk. It does feel good to be back making more coherent scripted lore content again, and rest assured more is on the way. The next topic will be a full-blown theory, one that I'm sure a lot of you will be excited about. As a teaser, let me tell you that it will be related to the moon and the creation of the Hakure barrier, but that will come when it's been cooking for long enough. So, like every time before, I hope you've enjoyed this little rambling. I'm always open for topic suggestions in the comments. But with that, I'm going to bid you all farewell. My name is Teo Veijem, and we'll see you in the next video.